primary care is an innovative, alternative path to insurance-driven healthcare. Typically, a patient pays their doctor a low monthly membership and, in return, builds a lasting relationship with their doctor and has their doctor available at their fingertips. Welcome to the My DPC Story podcast, where each week you will hear the ever so relatable stories shared by physicians who have chosen to practice medicine in their individual communities through the direct primary care model. I'm your host, Marielle Concepcion, family physician, DPC owner, and former fee-for-service doctor. I hope you enjoy today's episode and come away feeling inspired about the future of patient care, direct primary care.
My practice is set up in a way such that I can be very intentional about how I spend my time and how I take care of my patients. And in the spirit of that, it is patient-centric. It is about providing patients with the highest level of care and the best healthcare experience that they have ever experienced, hopefully, and so that they can leave feeling like somebody cares about them and that they have a path forward, that they have a plan, that they know the plan, that they've been heard. And to me, I mean, what a legacy. That's what I want to be known for as someone who served my community, who took good care of patients, who mattered. I'm Dr. Ashley Agan of Scottie ENT, and this is my DSC story.
Dr. Ashley Agan is an otolaryngologist and founder of Scottie ENT, a direct specialty care practice in Dallas, Texas. After nearly 13 years at UT Southwestern, including a clerkship director role, she left academic medicine to build a practice rooted in something the system couldn't give her: time, relationship, and a patient experience worth remembering. Named for her late grandmother, Scottie ENT has become a great example in authentic DPC marketing. Dr. Agan built her patient base not through billboards or ad spend, but through Google reviews that tell the story her website can't. Patients writing, in their own words, that she listened, that she had a plan, that she cared. In a crowded Dallas ENT market, she stopped leading with her credentials and started leading with the symptom, "I help you breathe better." In this episode, she shares what she would do differently from day one, why she stopped offering super bills, and how thinking like a person serving others, and not just as a salesperson, is the marketing strategy that actually works. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Agan.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. I was laughing because just before I got on, I was like looking at my Flonase and I'm like, that's so funny. I get to interview somebody who's special.
How appropriate.
Flonase. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So another thing we have in common is that we are both familiar with small towns. I'm currently practicing in a small town. You're currently in Dallas, a little bigger of a town.
Mhm.
But when you grew up, you were in a small town yourself. So tell us a little bit about how did you go from small town Ashley Agan to Dr. Agan, who is just recently leaving academic medicine at a very well-respected institute, to opening your own private practice.
Yeah. I grew up in a small town about an hour north of Dallas. So we still had access to the big city if we needed it, but small town. So everybody knows your name, kind of one of those places, small school. And I think it's so funny when I think about growing up. I remember, obviously, we lived on a ranch with maybe 100 acres or something. So a lot of land, lots of room to roam and play. And the beautiful stars at night, clear skies, just like kind of wide open spaces. And I remember as a kid thinking, wow, I don't think I would want to ever live anywhere else. This is so amazing. And now I live kind of right in the middle of Dallas. and it's just the total opposite, although we do still go out and get a little bit of country time every now and then, but it's the conveniences of the city. It's balancing that piece of it, because everything in Dallas is kind of like steps away. Whereas when I was a kid, if we were going to the grocery store, it was like load up in the car. It's a 30-minute drive down the road to go get groceries. But I think I loved it because there was the sense of community, that classic kind of stereotypical small town sense of community where everyone knows your name and everyone really rallies around you in any sort of time of trial or tribulation. And so I think that probably does weigh into kind of how I am today. And I do love community, and that probably has led to why I've chosen to kind of be in the type of practice I'm in. I don't think I've ever thought about it to this extent, but now that I'm talking about it, I do think that's just something that is part of who I am.
I can easily see that, and especially because you've been building your community of people who value you, and what a thing to be valued in medicine these days as a physician. So I think it's definitely it's not a surprise, and I think that it speaks really highly to the environment that you grew up in to be able to bring that to people even in a big town like Dallas. So
Right.
I think about even just this idea of you being an ENT. There's a lot of primary care doctors going into direct primary care as a business model. There's also specialists like yourself who've chosen DPC as a business model. But for an otolaryngologist, I mean, I'm joking about Flonase, but it's like you guys do way more on your services page on your website. You do way more than just like everyday allergies and
Right.
allergic rhinitis. So when you are talking about your practice and just your profession and your specialty in particular, I'm wondering how you've learned or how you've adapted talking to just everyday community members about what it is you do as an otolaryngologist and why should people really care that people like you exist in the world?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and something I would say that's one of the biggest things I have learned now that I am in a space where I am thinking more about marketing and like visibility, and ENT is a small specialty, and there are even many of my colleagues, like sometimes we'll be talking and I'll talk about something that we do and they're like, "Oh, you guys do that?" There's so many things that people who just don't really know what we do. And so I have really made a bigger switch from when I'm either when I'm giving talks or if I'm writing an article or doing any sort of marketing, going to events, from saying, I'm an ENT, I'm an otolaryngologist, to trying to say, I help you breathe better. Or like, you've got that clogged, stuffy ear. I can help you with that. And trying to be more symptom specific and get down to, okay, this is the pain that you're having. And this is the skill set I have to be able to help you navigate that. And in ENT, it is we kind of encompass the area of the head and neck, kind of nose, throat, ears. It is all connected, but it is also all a little unique too. And then we take care of adults and kids. So it's kind of this and that's one of the reasons I went into ENT is because I love the variety. But when you are trying to figure out who are your people, who do you help, there's lots of different buckets inside of that when you think about all the things we treat. And so I have had to kind of change the way I talk about what I do rather than just saying, yeah, I'm an ENT. Do you need an ENT? Because a lot of people don't know if they need an ENT. They just know that they don't feel well, or they're dizzy and they don't want to be dizzy anymore, or they're tired of having sinus infections or whatever it is. So I think getting to the more specifics and trying to help people know, okay, these are the things that I do, the things that I treat, the tools that I have to help has been helpful.
I think that's wonderful. And especially at a time where people like you who are specialists going into DPC as a business model are talking to everyday patients that are potentially walking in from they saw your advertisement or whatever, like a cold call type of patient versus you being in an academic center where basically all you see is the internal referrals that you've been sent from the primary care physicians or non-physician providers that, are told that they must send their referrals to you because you are in their system. And I think about the the importance of the ears, nose, and throat is like massive. And I think that like
Mhm.
when you talk to people, as you just mentioned, it's like after a minute, you're like, oh, shoot, that's where most of my problems are when I get a cold, when I get
Right.
congested from allergies. So it's so valuable what you're delivering. And I'm just wondering if we take a step back into the time before you transitioned, you were, like I mentioned, at an academic center, you were at UT Southwestern. And you were in leadership, you were in academics, and you were in a clerkship director position.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, what was it about that chapter in your life that wasn't enough in addition to the community aspect of your practice now?
Yeah. So, yeah, I was at the medical school for almost 8 years, and I had done my training there as well. So, in all, I had been there 13, almost 13 years, right? And I loved teaching. I taught medical students and residents. The the rub for me was that every there was this continuous push to to see more patients in less time. And it is not possible. And I also, like, I'm back to that part of me that loves community and loves to know my patients. Like, from the very begin from when I first thought I might be a doctor, that vision was always, like, to have a relationship with people and to know them and to say, "Hey, how you doing? How's the family? How was the trip to Italy?" or whatever it is. And then to say, "Okay, and what's going on today?" Right? To be able for it to be more than just this superficial transaction. And and so I had been able to do that in my 20-minute slots, sort of, all those years. I was perpetually running late. Like, I was always late. I was always working through my lunch. I was always apologizing as soon as I walked in the door. "I'm so sorry. So sorry I'm running late," because it's just a constant, just hurried throughout the day. And so I just couldn't I think I just got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do it this way anymore. And a pivotal moment for me was I had we ran a long wait list. We frequently, it would be 3 to 6 months for patients to get in. So patients would wait a long time. On top of that, I had a few patients who had either flown in to see me, like they traveled. I was like, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." So you waited and you traveled. And then I had one patient where I think her appointment had gotten canceled because we had a snow day or something had happened like that where she got bumped, and she ended up getting waiting another 3 months after that. She got, like, double bumped out and had waited an insane amount of time, 6 plus months to see me for something. And I thought, if patients are willing to travel or to wait that long, then they might be willing to see me outside of insurance. That was kind of like the first moment I thought, because I know for me personally, my time is my most valuable thing, and I am happy to pay to be able to see someone quickly and to spend a little bit more time with someone, like to get a better quality experience. And that was kind of the first time that I started thinking about, like, maybe there could be another way to do this.
I love that. And I definitely would say for the listeners out there, if you're thinking about, yes, there are things that I pay or will pay for because of access. That's what we're doing in TPC, guys. So yay us. And I think that it also is just a nice reminder to hear from somebody who is coming from an academic institution that, like, you're realizing what people value, and it's not like you had the moments of clarity thinking those thoughts versus I just have to keep my head down and keep working and keep working. And I just think about, you interviewed another private ENT physician, and you guys were talking about, you mentioned there's burnout over the word burnout because it's so overused, and it's like just this idea of there's people now that are thinking thoughts like you did and acting on thoughts like you did. And that is really getting at the heart of why people, I feel, use the word burnout so much, is because they're trying to describe, I just need a breath of air. I need a breath of space. I need these things that I cannot find in a 20-minute or less visit. Go to primary care, and it's even more
You bet.
impacted than that. Yeah. So I think about now going into this idea of community. It's such a rich theme is what I'm hearing, but also it's so beautiful the way that you named your clinic. So let's talk about that,
Mm.
because I think that it's like in a time when we see, oh, somebody was bought out by this health system and they have billboards and Super Bowl ads. You are standing out from the crowd in such a good way and such a personable way. So tell us about how the name came to be Scottie ENT.
Yes. So Scotty was my grandmother's nickname, And about a year before I opened my practice, she passed away from ovarian cancer. So she had been diagnosed maybe a year before that. And at her diagnosis, it was metastatic, it was everywhere. And I'm the only physician in my family. And so I was a big part of helping just coordinate her care. And from the moment of, I mean, I could list so many things that were just cringe over that the whole experience. But you have this woman who's in her 80s who, she had abdominal swelling, and her primary care doctor sent her for a scan and then basically just forwarded her the report. And she like is calling me and reading off, trying to say the word carcinoma and carcinomatosis. And I will never forget that night and just how I was trying to keep my composure to not scare her. But I remember her saying, I don't like that sound of that word. That reminds me of cancer. That, and I just thought, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? It's not how we take care of people. And so I played a big role in just helping getting her referred to the right specialist and trying to expedite her biopsy. Like every step of the way was so painful. And my mom, her daughter, and my aunt, they were trying to kind of help get her to where she needed to go and coordinate appointments and all this. And it was just so hard. And I think for me, being on the patient side of medicine and kind of hearing, they would call me and be like, they said this, does this sound right? And we're not going to be able to get in here until 6 weeks or that. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. Let's call. And I mean, luckily, because I'm in medicine, I knew people enough to be able to find and pull strings here and there. And we were able to move things along better than what you could calling through the front line. But there was still a lot of delays and it took a lot of time. And so I think with me opening my clinic on the heels of all of that, it was just so heavy on me of I want my patients to have a better experience than that. And I can't fix the whole system, but I'm just going to, in my little ecosystem, I am going to put my flag down that we are all about patient experience. We are going to do everything in our power to make it a seamless experience from the time you call and get your appointment or make it online, like moving through the whole way through. If we need to get you referred somewhere, we're going to make sure that that's a warm handoff. We just want it to be what would be reasonable, what you would want for your family member. And so in trying to think of something to name my clinic, I thought I had a thought of what if I named it Scottie, which on the obviously it's a beautiful tribute to my grandmother, and she would have loved it. I'm sure she is smiling down and thinks it's so cool. And on the other hand too, it's just kind of unique and different, and so it makes people kind of go, Scottie, what is that? Because it's not like Dallas ear, nose, and throat care or something, like kind of something generic. It has like a uniqueness to it that kind of makes people like want to look again and be like, what's going on over here? So it's funny though, because a lot of people will be, if they haven't read the story on the website, they'll be like, wait, your name's Ashley? Who's Scottie? What's the Scottie? But yeah.
I'm sure though that once they know what Scottie represents and what its history is, I'm sure that they include that when they're telling other people about your clinic. So I think that is an amazing tribute to your grandmother, but also a tribute to what healthcare was before and what it can be again, with people like you and myself and the people who are listening, opening up DPCs all over the nation. With what we're doing, it matters. And so I think about when it comes to your just the idea of, yes, Scottie is not something health or something religious name institution. It's like you are still in this marketplace of Dallas. And I'm just wondering, when it comes to things like marketing in a crowded market, quote unquote, because you guys have a lot more people than where you grew up and where I'm living now. But tell us about your marketing strategy to be seen in the sea of systems. Because I think that this is something that does challenge people and cause fears when it comes to making the transition to private practice if you're if you're in a metropolitan area.
Mhm. Yes. No, it's true. I think it is intimidating to think because yes, we have a ton of ENTs. There are plenty of ENTs. I think I've had enough patient feedback and referring doctors who back to the fact that people were willing to wait 6 months to see me. I think that I was like, okay, there is something like for the people who are my people, there is something that I have that is worth is worth the spend. It's worth going out of network to see me, which is mostly like time and compassion and caring and talking to people, making them feel like they are seen and cared for. And so from a marketing standpoint, our big one of the kind of prongs for that is reviews and testimonials. And so we've had a big focus on asking for reviews from patients because we've had patients who have told us, "Oh, I was looking for an ENT and I saw your reviews and I was like, that's the girl for me." Because if you look through my reviews, a lot of it is people saying, "She spent a lot of time with me. She listened to me. Was thoughtful and I have a plan and I feel she cares and I'm going to get better." What I hear from patients coming to see me as a second or third opinion is that the other options in the market are mostly a rushed experience that where they leave not sure what the plan is and not totally feeling like they were heard. And so, and I'm not saying I have ENT colleagues in Dallas who are great. So I'm not saying that every ENT in town is provides a rushed visit or anything like that. But even with the way medicine is, it is hard to, my consults are an hour. My new patient consults are an hour. It is very hard to give someone an hour of your time if you are relying on insurance reimbursement to kind of pay for those visits. It's not any one doctor's fault. That's just the system that math doesn't work really. So I think because I am outside of that, I have the luxury of being able to schedule a patient for an hour of time. I had a patient today she was just like, "You are the first person that's been even curious about what's going on or who's let me tell this whole story of what's going on." And so that is a recurring theme is patients who are just looking for someone that is going to let them tell everything that's been going on, who's going to be curious enough to say, "Should we order this more testing? Should we do this?" And who's not going to brush them off and say, "Yeah, it's probably this, try this medicine, see you in 3 months." And and so just helping patients know that that's who we are through, yes, asking for Google reviews in our website to some extent paints that picture, but you got to get people. You got to get people to your to your website. But we've had some success with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is always a little bit iffy because about half the patients will no show. But the ones who come through are all have been great matches for us. And I think the biggest surprise for me actually was how many patients exist outside of insurance already. And they love the fact that we have transparent cash pricing on our website. And so they're actually like, we have a fair amount of patients who were looking for a cash pay practice. And so that was pretty cool too, because I don't, being in an academic center, you're kind of insulated from kind of the real world. And I just assumed that the majority of people had insurance and kind of were seeing their doctors through that way. But there's a huge amount of patients who maybe they're self-employed or they have a job where they don't have insurance and they have money and they want to spend, they're willing to like spend to take care of themselves. But they also appreciate just knowing exactly how much it's going to be and not being worried about having some sort of surprise bill 6 months later or something like that. So I love being able to take care of those patients because I feel like I'm kind of helping fill a gap where there's a need. So
There's definitely need, and sadly, it's growing. I mean, literally, we're doing this interview the day that you guys, as a state, are having a Senate primary, and it's like people are angry about healthcare, people who deliver healthcare, people who are receiving
Mhm.
healthcare. And we, as people on both sides of the fence, when we're the patient or when we're the doctor, we can see it. And absolutely, I think that it is so wonderful that even just this funnel that you're describing, what's the catch all? If it happens to be a Google review, great. But then I do think absolutely your website is so beautiful at nurturing the culture that you're bringing through these reviews. They can see you go to your homepage and there's you laughing. I the the hired actors that are in these ads for the banners, or like the Canva graphics that I've seen on multiple banners. I'm like, that's very different than Dr. Egan's page. And like even when you're the picture of you walking the patient down the hallway, I mean, it's very intentional no matter where the person comes down in your funnel and finds you. I think that that's a very well it's a complementary marketing strategy that I'm just seeing from California. So I think it's awesome. And I wonder about also you have Ashley Agan MD, your personal website is
Mhm.
also, and I'm just wondering if you can talk to us about how that plays into into your practice, into Scottie ENT, as well as your
Mhm.
podcast, because there are some physicians who are, I can't necessarily advertise that I'm going to be leaving, but I can have a personal brand page. And
Mhm.
I'd love to know what was the history behind having your own page and how has that helped you?
Yeah, and that's something gosh, I wish that I had thought of that a couple years before I had the made the leap because I don't think I at that time appreciated the power and the value of developing your own personal brand and what that even means. And so the podcast Backtable ENT is a podcast that I host with my bestie Gopi Shah, and she's a pediatric ENT, and we started that back in 2020. And it is a doctor's talking shop, just kind of like, how do you do this? What instrument do you like for this? How do you work up these patients? That sort of thing. And so our audience is physicians, so peers. But it has grown so much and it's out there. And so sometimes patients will find me through that because they were diagnosed with something and they Googled it, and then we pop up and then they sit there and listen to us talk, and then they'll get on a plane and come see me because they saw me do that podcast, which I never would have guessed in my wildest dreams that would be a thing. But that the podcast has been a really amazing way to educate patients, to get to talk to some of the real experts in our field of ENT. And so I feel like that, even though that has nothing to do with Scottie per se, because that's part of my personal brand and that's out there. That's kind of I think of it almost as a pillar, like of one of the things that I'm doing that's out there that kind of helps bolster my personal brand. And as Scottie grows, like I hope to have at least a partner someday, maybe partners would be great. And so that having that separate leaves space for Scottie to be kind of like the brand of the clinic, and then for me to have my personal brand that is the podcast. It's the yes, it's part of it is the clinic, but then if I decide I want to do more speaking opportunities or other things, it just kind of keeps it a little bit cleaner. But I think to your point about people who are employed and thinking that how can I what can I do for my own kind of personal brand and visibility? I think having your own website, whether it's like your name or whether it's theeardoctor.com or whatever it is, I think if I were talking to my younger self, I would have said, hey, start this early. And then regardless of whether you decide to open up your own clinic or not, it's nice to have, I think.
And I think about the like exponential growth that we're seeing in direct primary care and direct specialty care, but I think about that even when I talk to people who are starting out in person, just the idea of having or making an elevator pitch or talking about themselves is so uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us even a little bit more about like mindset when it comes to the first time one does that to when you've done it so many times you don't even realize you're doing it.
Mhm.
Because we're talking about marketing this month. We're talking about there's definitely ways to market without being icky. And a used
Mhm.
car salesman, no shade to used car salesman, but the stereotype there. And I'm just wondering if you have advice for our audience when it comes to you are marketing yourself because you have to, and this is a way to think about marketing so you don't feel icky.
Yeah. No, that's a big one. It's a big one because it's so important when you have your own business to let people know you exist, right? And I would say the the kind of cold calling on referring doctors, like I do that a lot, trying to just kind of sometimes it is I literally have a minute or 30 seconds to be like, hey, da, 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 and like that elevator pitch, like you talked about. And I have looped in my husband and my sister to kind of like listen to it for me or to just practice saying it out loud because you think you got it in your head and then you start to say it out loud and you're like, ooh, wait a minute, I don't like the way it sounds. Let me do that again. And so something even just silly as that, literally just practicing saying it out, saying it out loud, saying it out loud. And then I try to keep in mind like the patients like when I'm going to talk to a referring doctor, I try to think of the most recent patients who've told me that they were really happy, who were just super satisfied. And so sometimes if I run out of things to say or if I lose my elevator pitch, I can just give an example of, like, for example, I had this one patient that saw me recently and she was so thrilled that she got in same day and she had this and da da da, and she's doing great. Because I think when you think about your referring doctors, they just want their patients to be taken care of, right? And especially me, when I send patients somewhere else, I want to vet them and make sure I'm like sending them somewhere where that's going to take care of them as I would, right? And then with the events, so like for example, this week I'm doing a local event here that's part of the Chamber of Commerce community event where you have a table and there'll be lots of people from the community coming by. For those, when I'm talking to potential patients, again, I try to go back to what's your pain point? Like, these are the things that I do that can help you. And I try to really, in my brain, think about how if people don't know you exist, then they can't seek you out for the services. And I try to just think about the people who I've helped who have told me thank you so much. My life is better because of you. And I think about them and I if I'm feeling salesy or then I think about that and I'm like, okay, they did not feel like I sold quote sold them. They just they have a better life now. So more people need to know you exist so that they can come to you and feel better and see what's on the other side of whatever pain points they're experiencing. So I try to just keep that thought process and I think about if I'm talking to a friend and a friend was telling me like, "Oh yeah, I've got this thing." Then I would say, "Oh yeah, I would really want you to do this or da 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 da." As opposed to come see me as your doctor, make an appointment today, or I don't know, just more like how can I help you? Like a service mindset, I guess would be a good way to think about it. I'm serving you, I'm serving the community. I want everybody to feel better, have a better quality of life. This is kind of how I do it. And if that fits with what you're looking for, then come on over. And if not, there's a lot of other great ENTs in town and that's okay too.
And again, I go back to your wait list was months long, and there's still a lot of ENTs in Dallas. So it's for, especially for the specialists out there, yes, that is one thing that you could focus on, but also hear Dr. Agan's words and think about this is, as an otolaryngologist, she is standing out because she's focusing on her patient experience and she's focusing on what her brand is delivering to her community, period. Not how do I compete with that billboard. And
Right.
and one of the things too I want to ask, like going back to your podcast. So you guys have just passed your 200th episode, so congratulations on that. I'm just wondering when you talk about like you're asking your guests, what tool do you prefer to
Mhm.
that type of detail is fascinating, I think, for patients these days because so many people are like
Mhm.
talking about like Dr. Pimple Popper and like
Mhm.
how we do the things that we were trained to do.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering in terms of amongst the ENT community, I'm wondering about how do you approach talking about a parathyroid surgery or a nasal polyp or something that is technical, but you're still breaking it down because you're not sure if a physician or patient or both physician and patient will listen to your episodes?
So I think the fundamentally, because our mission for that podcast is physician education, it's mostly centered around that piece of it, around our peers being able to take something away from it that is valuable. The patient aspect of it, we're still, I mean, that we actually talked about that recently about, is there is there a way to kind of serve both populations, because there is overlap and there are patients who are finding it, and I think the jury is still out, because our main audience, our main mission in starting the podcast was more about medical education. But lately, we kind of, right now, the most simple way forward is something we talked about, where just as simple as, what do you say at the end of the podcast? What would you say to a patient, blah, 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 like about da, da, da. So having some like patient specific questions in there that are kind of more switch your brain. How do you talk to patients versus like, how do you talk to your peers or your residents or that sort of thing? And so that is kind of as far as we are right now. And I mean, the other piece is that it's hard to know what the breakdown is, right? So like when you release your podcast on whatever platform, you don't get that level of information back as far as like how many of these listeners are physicians, how many of them are patients, or that piece of it. And so I know that there's patients listening, because there's patients who tell me like, "Oh, I listened to your podcast." But outside of that, I don't know what our numbers are for patient listeners. And so it is evolving. I think there is among the team, because we do, I don't think I mentioned this part. So Backtable is a family of podcasts. So there are other specialties we've grown. We started out as, the first one actually was a interventional IR show, and then ENT was second, and then urology and OBGYN and MSK. I'm probably there. It has grown now. So there's several shows. And so there is discussion among kind of all the show leaders of, okay, there is opportunity here to be able to also educate patients. And then now the question is kind of like, what form does that look like? What form does that take?
And I think it just highlights, especially, don't be closed off to marketing opportunities, because absolutely, like, I put my podcast on my clinic website and even though it's not necessarily me interviewing
Mm-hmm.
patients, that's coming, the my DPC story content focusing on physician conversations, people are like, my patients are like, "Oh yeah, I told da 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 about this da da da," because they actually were in whatever town and whatever city in Idaho that I just featured with
Oh,
Dr.
cool.
Jillian Clucky. So it's like there, I do absolutely agree with you that speaking your truth to the audience that you're going to speak to is a great way to focus and make sure that you're staying true to that. And then if stuff happens down the road, be open to that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that especially in the DPC world, it's like you never know that the person that you just told DPC to about DPC to in the grocery store has the whole family that needs care and they're going to go see
Mm-hmm.
you. So like never know, but being open to those things and those opportunities, I think is awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
that's fantastic what you guys are doing at Backtable. And I definitely encourage everybody to listen, especially if you're a specialist listening to your colleagues. So when it comes to the services that you're delivering and that people are traveling to see you for, I wonder if you can talk to our audience, especially because there are a lot of primary care people wanting to partner with DPC friendly practices,
Mm-hmm.
cash pay practices, people who have time with their patients. That's like my favorite type of referral. And I'm wondering what does that look like in terms of you taking care of a DPC patient in particular, because there's lots in
Mm-hmm.
Dallas, and
Mm-hmm.
how does that work going both from the DPC referring to you and then back to the DPC?
Mm-hmm. So first off, I think partnering with DPC practices is easy. It's so amazing because those patients already get it. They already are sold on that model and they understand, and it's a no-brainer. And so I would say I have a lot of DPC colleagues who might shoot me a text and curbside me and be like, "Hey, this is happening. What would you do?" And if it's something that we can kind of troubleshoot over text, I might help however I can. And then if it's, well, this person really needs an evaluation, they need a scope or they need a surgery or whatever it is, then they're sending them over to be seen. And for my so be, when I started, I did have a membership option because I just didn't know kind of what patients would want, right? And I did have patients in my academic practice who would show up and say, "I just need to get established with an ENT. Like I just need to have you on my team," right? Kind of like having a membership. So that was an option. But as time went on, I realized for me as a specialist, most patients want to see me for something very specific and then not see me. They want to be better and then not see me anymore, right? So it's very different from DPC where you have that membership and long-term continuity. And so I kind of switched to having just more of a straight fee-for-service essentially model to having a straight fee-for-service model. So patients will see me for their new patient consult, and then they might see me for follow-up 1 to 2 times, depending on what's going on. If it seems like they have something that is more chronic in nature, I have done like packages of follow-ups so that you can kind of get a price break if you buy 5 visits at a time, just to kind of help that kind of replace the membership essentially, is having packages. And then, for example, for surgeries, I work with a surgery center who is kind of specialized in bundled pricing for facility and anesthesia. And so a lot of times, like the price differences for patients, like I'll have patients who were quoted something at the children's hospital or at the big academic facility for their child to have ear tubes or something simple. And the quotes are for just facility fee are like 10,000, 15,000, and these people have insurance, like they just have a high deductible plan. And they're like, we can't afford to do that. And they're put in a position where it's okay, my child is got fluid in their ears and they can't hear very well and they've got speech delay, but we can't afford it. So long story short, this surgery center that I work with has really amazing bundled pricing. So we can do ear tubes. I want to say like facility and anesthesia is, I want to say it's less than 2,000 or 3,000. I don't remember the exact amount, but by comparison, like a lot of these patients are like, "Wait, what?" It's significantly different. And so that's been a really fun thing to be able to offer patients because the price difference is so ridiculously better, and they're getting, and they still get great care. Like it's a great surgery center. Like I love the staff and the people who work there, and so there's no compromise on anything. It's just a much more fair price. And so yeah, it's really awesome.
And how did you find a surgery center that you could partner with? Because in all states, it's not okay. It's not copacetic. It's
Mm-hmm.
not kosher for physicians to own their own facility.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a really amazing, stupid rule. But in general, like for the doctors who are like, I didn't think you could be a surgeon and do direct specialty care, what would you say to them to find facilities where they can operate?
Yeah. So yeah, I was told that too when I was when I was saying that I was going to go do this. But so I'm trying to think of how we found them. I think I found them just like looking online, looking for like cash pricing for surgeries, or I don't know, because there's the surgery center in Oklahoma that is kind of like famous for that. And so I was probably just like Google searching or something around Dallas to find it. But I ended up like there was someone who worked there that saw that I had started my practice and reached out and was like, "Hey, you should come here." And so that was really the impetus of me like actually getting credentialed and going there, because like she had reached out. But I think, it was, I knew they existed, but it was on my long list of things I need to look into and go visit and that sort of thing. But I would imagine, I'm trying to think, if you're in a different area and you're looking for that type of thing. If it doesn't exist, then I would just start with the surgery center where you're at and see what you can do to negotiate some cash pricing, for at least for your uninsured patients. I mean, for patients with insurance, obviously those are going to be obligated for what the contracts are, but to be able to get like some cash pricing for your uninsured patients is nice to have.
Definitely. And for those of you who are listening and who are doing surgeries, definitely take a listen to Dr. Keith Smith, who is the co-founder of Surgery Center of Oklahoma, as well as Dr. Eric Inman, who is at Wellbridge in Indiana. And they're definitely talking about two different models. Dr. Inman actually takes insurance, but for the same price as cash pricing is what he's charging his patients. And then Dr. Smith does not take insurance. So
Mhm.
definitely interesting episodes to listen to. And I think about also, if you're like, where do I start? Like, call Dr. Smith at the Surgery Center of
Yeah.
Oklahoma too, because it's like we know each other in the DPC space. People who do surgery are also going to know
Mhm.
more surgeons who do direct
Mhm.
care, and then also your reps. If there's a rep who is a fantastic rep and they're like, my job is to sell product. I don't really care if a person is reimbursed for that or not. My job is just to sell the product, and you love the
Mhm.
product. They might also know a person in your locale or somewhere else. And I will say we partnered with FlexMed back in October for our last summit with them. But you could also do locums if you are wanting to have your own practice, but you don't necessarily operate at your facility. You can definitely be creative and operate in a different state or a different
Mhm.
locale. So many options out there these days. And it's because of people like you sharing their stories that like this is becoming more transparent. So fantastic. I love
Mhm.
it. For your services in particular, tell us about what Scottie ENT delivers to the community, because again, it's more than just nasal congestion and my Flonase that you are dealing with.
Yeah, so bread and butter for me, for kiddos, it's gonna be the recurrent ear infection or persistent middle ear effusion that's not going away, or speech delay, that sort of thing. Or the other most common thing in kids is gonna be sleep disordered breathing, snoring, OSA, big tonsils, big adenoids, that sort of thing. And so I see a ton of both of those. And kids are so great. They're so innocent and sweet. I love being able to I just love seeing kids and taking care of them. And they get better. Like we have really good, like the tools that we have to treat them really work well. I love like talking to a parent the next day, and just especially like with things like ear tubes, they'll be like, I swear, I think they're speaking more already. I think like they just, it's amazing. And then you've got, for my adults, I would say the most common things are going to be patients who are looking for maybe surgery for a deviated septum because they just can't breathe through their nose, never been able to breathe through their nose, and they're ready to move forward. Some like chronic or recurrent sinusitis, plus with potentially surgery for that if it's indicated. I have, when I was at UT Southwestern, my niche area of expertise was in eustachian tube disorders, and that has followed me. There is a type of eustachian tube dysfunction in which the eustachian tube is too open, which is more rare, right? When we think about eustachian tube disorders, we think, oh, the eustachian tube is swollen because they have allergies or something like that, and we need to give them some Flonase and have them try to Valsalva, right? There are some patients who have a eustachian tube. It's called patulous eustachian tube. The eustachian tube is, think of it, a little bit too leaky. It's not closing well. And those patients they also have a clogged, stuffy ear. So that makes it really confusing because they've probably been diagnosed with having a blocked eustachian tube. But the kind of hallmark is they will say that they hear episodes of where they feel like they hear their breath and their voice echoing up into their ear really loud. And that is a hallmark of patulous. It is usually better if they put their head down. And a lot of them will have a history of a rapid weight loss. And so 10 years ago, it was mostly the patients who were getting some sort of like gastric bypass or lap band. Now I'm seeing it in the patients who are on a GLP-1 drug. So that is something to be on the lookout for if you have a patient who has dropped 40 pounds in the last couple months and now they're starting to have ear symptoms. Think patchless.
And also give them Dr. Agan's website because they can go travel to see her. That's fantastic. And I think about that in terms of you mentioning what are your bread and butter in terms of a pediatric patient or an adult patient. These are absolutely things that, like, even in my rural town, it's like, one, to get into ENT, two, the concerns that you're mentioning. I can't afford that, but I need it and I can't get it. But yet if I did have it, my heart would be better because I could breathe better and give my body better. It's all so tied. And so these are the things that I struggle with my patients and getting them access. And I'm wondering for those patients who are like, I know that this is a private office and stuff, but do you ever get patients asking you, like, is this like the backdoor surgery center because you're like 80% off of the upsell that the insurance clinic has? Do you ever get that question? But are you really high quality? Because I think that skepticism is less, but I do get that question about other people's surgery centers when I tell them, I'm like, no, look at their pricing on their website. This is how much
Mhm.
it is. And they're like, is that real surgery though?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't come up a lot, but I have well, I always get great feedback about patients' surgical experience. And so I think once they go through it, they're like, "Oh yeah, that was great." And so it hasn't been a big issue. And they might be thinking it and maybe they're not saying it out loud, but I mean I think that is probably a very like who wouldn't kind of have that thought. But I also think when I talk to patients about surgery pricing in clinic, a lot of it is talking about the way insurance works and kind of helping educate patients on why things might be more expensive and how it might not be tied to actual quality or any sort of metric that affects them at all. It's just about negotiating the highest amount possible.
And again, I that's why I say there's less skepticism because more people are waking up to that, especially our patients. And no matter what geographic locale you're coming from, they're assuming it's because of the insurance that they can't get care. It's not because of the
Mhm.
doctors, it's because of the insurance. And so here I want to ask about when we think of when you look back on your time at UT Southwestern and just like the things that you're hearing now and seeing now, I'm wondering what is like one of the most helpful things that people could be asking their primary care patients before sending them to an ear, nose, and throat doctor to help potentially alleviate that like pimple pressure of, oh my God, like you cannot get in to see me for this many months and the patient is chomping at the bit to see you, but also something that doesn't get addressed because impacted primary care practices don't have the time to ask these questions.
Yeah. So I think one thing that is helpful is knowing is this something is the problem that there's something going on that we don't know what it is? Is this a diagnosis problem? Or is it okay, it seems like you have this problem and you could benefit from this surgery. And so it's going to be more streamlined, right? If you think about most traditional ENT practices now, what I'm seeing is a move towards having the basically surgeons surgerizing because that's that's what the payment model like emphasizes. So you want your surgeons doing surgery, and then they will have a lot of advanced practice providers, PAs and nurse practitioners, who are helping with things that might be non-surgical. So things like dizziness or tinnitus or hearing loss or allergies or things where it's probably going to be some sort of medical management. And I think I see a lot of patients who are disappointed because they really wanted to see the doctor. And I think in traditional practices right now, it's just really that's just kind of the move that I'm seeing because that makes financial sense. If you think about widgets in a business and you've got this one expensive widget over here. You need it to be doing things that bring a lot of revenue. And so I think a lot of businesses are putting the surgeons in the operating room and having other providers kind of see non-surgical things. So that's one thing to just kind of think about in referring patients, is knowing what is the question. It is likely that if they are looking for a surgical, like if they're ready for their sinus surgery or their nose surgery or whatever it is, it might be a lot easier for them to get in, actually. Like I've noticed some practices will triage based on what you're coming in for, which I understand why it is, but it's unfortunate because I'll see these patients who are miserable and dizzy and they can't function, but they really can't get in to see anybody for a while. And so that's kind of the state of affairs, so to speak, as it relates to kind of referring into a typical ENT practice these days. And as far as what you can be doing on the primary care side of it, I think the things like scans are helpful. So if you are referring a patient for a chronic sinusitis or recurrent sinusitis, having that CT scan ahead of time is going to help make that first appointment a lot more meaningful because that will already have been done. It's usually just a non-contrasted CT sinus. For ear problems, sometimes a CT temporal bone is helpful depending on what the patient is experiencing. I would say for anything in the neck, every now and then I'll get a non-contrasted CT of the neck, which is never very helpful. So I wouldn't ever get that. And the other thing for any patient with some sort of ear thing, so if they have dizziness or if they have tinnitus or ringing or anything like that, if there is a way for them to get an audiogram ahead of time, that can be helpful. A lot of ENT practices will have an audiologist in their office, but sometimes if they're trying to schedule a patient such that they see audiology on the same day that they see the physician, sometimes that's going to make it harder to schedule, and a patient might be scheduled further out because you're looking for a spot that's got both audiology and a physician. So if patients are willing to do them on different days, that might be helpful and a better way to get them in. Also, like a lot of places that sell hearing aids will do a hearing test. And so there's ways to kind of get that done. And that way, if that shows something suspicious, if back to the dizzy patient, if they've got a low frequency hearing loss and you're thinking it might be Meniere's, then that might be something that you could help them with while they wait to see the ENT. I don't know. I could probably think of 100 examples of things.
I think those are super helpful. And I will say also, especially to the primary care docs out there, if you have an audiogram in your office, don't be surprised if the internal system also refuses to accept it because they have to do their own for their billing purposes, because that's a fun experience that we have in Sonora, California. But I will say that like you're at least able to, if you have an audiogram, you're able to tell your patient like what you're seeing, and it helps you advocate for them when you're talking to a specialist office, even if they won't accept it. It's still helpful to do those things. So that's fantastic. You mentioned also that you are present on platforms where, like a platform where a patient can find you. But what about in terms of telemedicine as a way for people to reach your services who might not be able to necessarily see you in Dallas yet? How do you incorporate telemedicine into your surgical procedures as well as your day-to-day clinic patients?
Yes. So for anybody who's going to travel to see me, I usually require that they do a virtual meet and greet with me ahead of time, because the last thing I want to do is have someone travel across the country and then me say, "Oh, I don't treat that. I don't want to waste anybody's time." And so that at least helps us kind of just set expectations, what can be done on that day and what you may need to come back for, right? Because a lot of times patients will say, "I want to fly in and then I want to have my surgery and then I want to fly in." And so I'm like, a lot of times I'm like, we're like, maybe someday we can kind of accommodate that, but that one's usually a tough ask. But so I like to be able to meet people if they're traveling. For patients who want a second opinion, depending on what state they are in, sometimes I can offer a virtual second opinion. And that is helpful, especially for the patchless eustachian tube issue, because there are so few of us who actually treat that. That has been helpful for patients because most of that is I mean, the exam is one piece of it. I would say usually when I'm giving that second opinion and looking at the audiogram and the scans and kind of hearing what the symptoms are, there is always like a caveat of we are missing the exam, but this is what I can kind of tell you from what has been done. And some patients live in a place where I might know somebody and I might be able to actually recommend someone for them to see close by, which they appreciate enormously. And some people end up just coming down to see me depending on what we find and where they're located. So those for my patients who are far away, and some of them, Texas is a big state, so some of them are in Texas, but they're just several hours away, and so that's helpful. And even I will say, even for my patients who are local, we'll do telemedicine for follow-up sometimes because they live an hour away, or patients who live in Fort Worth, they don't want to drive over to Dallas because of traffic. So I love being able to just kind of jump on a Zoom call and kind of talk about what symptoms they're experiencing or what we might need to do. So
I'm laughing because Dr. Krista Springston, who's internal medicine, would say, "Oh, you mean Fort Worth, Dallas?" Because she's from Fort Worth. That's awesome.
That's
I
funny.
gotta make sure I send this episode to her. Oh my goodness. Again, you're bringing such a history already into opening your brand, but also you're continuing to build it to respect that brand and respect the culture that it's bringing.
Yeah. I want patients to remember how we made them feel. It's just like the quote by, is it Maya Angelou, who said that they won't remember what you said to them. People remember how you made them feel. And that's what we are striving for people to remember how we made them feel, and specifically to feel cared for and to be seen. And so that's the most important thing. And what I hope that Scottie will be synonymous with is somewhere where you can go and to be seen and to be heard and felt like someone actually cares about you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Agan, for sharing your story today.
Thank you. This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here for this episode of My DPC Story. Whether you stumbled across DPC for the first time today or you've been in practice for years, these stories are here for you, wherever you are in your DPC journey. And that's exactly how the Start Here page at mydpcstory.com is built now. It meets you where you are. New to DPC and learning the fundamentals? There's a path for that. Already practicing or in the planning stages and looking for practical tools? There's a path for that too. Ready to go deeper? That's covered. Head to the Start Here page at mydpcstory.com and find your starting point. If you have a question or challenge you want to hear addressed on the show, go to the contact page at mydpcstory.com and leave me a voice message. And if this episode moved you, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It's one of the best ways to help other physicians find these stories when they need them the most. For commercial-free episodes and extended conversations, check out our Patreon. There's a free tier and a paid tier, and both help keep the show going. Follow us on socials at MyDPCStory and find everything from episodes, free resources, the DPC Toolkit magazine, and more at mydpcstory.com. My DPC Story is created and hosted by me, Marielle Concepcion. A huge thank you to the team that makes this show possible. Chief Growth Officer, Kira Hanselman, Head of Marketing and Strategy, Natalia Highland, and Chief Operational Officer, Alexandra Goebel. We are all in your corner. Until next time, this is Marielle Concepcion.